In this video, I'm going to show you how Uber manipulates both drivers and riders in order to conduct one of the most diabolical payment systems the world has ever seen. And even more importantly, I want to show drivers how they can use that to their benefit and hopefully help you earn a little more money. I ended up making a pretty penny on New Year's Eve, and instead of just listing out advice on how to earn more money as a driver, I figured I'd show you in practice. Now, I'm going to wait until the end of the video to show you what my actual earnings were for the night, mainly because the amount I'm going to show is unbelievable, at least in terms of Uber earnings in 2025. And I don't want people to get the wrong idea. This is not a lucrative gig. In fact, in my market, Philadelphia, on most days, it's barely a break-even enterprise. Most days, the offers Uber gives you look like this. Think, for a trip like this, after expenses, you're making less than minimum wage. But there are still certain times where you can make a little money if you play it right. So I just dropped somebody off. It was actually a really good fare. It was so good that it's actually why I decided to screen record these offers Uber was giving to me. The riders I had just dropped off had paid $39 for their fare. Well, they actually paid $47, including their tip, which was very generous. In case you're wondering, drivers get 100% of the tip, so anyone who does tip their driver, it's very much appreciated. And so I ended up clearing $43 for a 10-minute trip. Again, this is not normal. And before we get to how I earned that much, a little side plot that we'll come back to later. From that $46 the rider paid, Uber kept a little less than $4. They itemized this $1.43 differently than their service fee, which that right there is a topic that deserves its own video. But even if we go by that baloney accounting, Uber profits $2.23 from this ride. Again, remember that for later. So I had dropped those riders off somewhere down around here. Now, the first thing I want you to notice about my screen recording, other than the ridiculously high surge pricing, is that I'm offline. See, every single ride I take after I accept it, I make sure I click Stop Accepting New Requests. And I do this for two reasons. The first and foremost is safety. You are about to see how incredibly distracting the Uber app is with the offers they throw at drivers. And keep in mind that this screen recording that I'm about to show you, all of these offers are being made to me while I'm driving. I mean, I just saw a story in Philly of how an Uber driver crashed into a parked tractor trailer. And unfortunately, the Uber passenger was killed. I doubt Uber would ever release this information, even though I'm sure they have it, but I would bet any amount of money that at the time of the crash, the Uber driver was looking at her phone, deciding on whether or not to take a request. So long ago, I started turning off new requests because the last thing I want to do is be driving, following a GPS because it's not like I know where I'm going without it, having a conversation with the people in my car, and deciding on the offers Uber is constantly throwing at me. And when I started doing that, what I found was the second reason why every driver should do this. See, when you're on a trip, you don't see where the map is surging. So Uber can offer you any amount of money, and you would be none the wiser on whether or not it's a good deal for you. And I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times when I'm on the app driving and I can't see the map, the surge amount that Uber offers me is less than either the area I'm in or an area that is literally blocks away. Case in point, when I had dropped the riders off that I had just mentioned, I was in a $12 surge zone. When I drive 5 minutes to the other side of town, I'm in a $30 surge zone. And I know typically the sound advice is don't chase the surge, but it was a super busy night being New Year's Eve, and it was only 1 a.m. I know that bars in that town don't close until 2. So basically, I'm betting that even if the surge doesn't stay at $30, which I wasn't sure that it would, there's still going to be somewhat of a surge when I get there. So really, what I was risking was 5 minutes of time. And for that $18 difference, that's definitely worth it. And as you're watching this, I want you to think, for every ride that I reject, someone else out there is accepting it, because that's how Uber works. When a driver doesn't accept a request, Uber passes it along to the next driver, sometimes increasing it by a few cents until eventually somebody does accept it. Now, this is Uber's way of applying pressure to drivers into scaring them to take rides, asking me if I'm still there. At the end of the day, they cannot deactivate somebody for not accepting requests. We're independent contractors. They would get sued to high heavens if they did that. And I would be the first plaintiff on that lawsuit. Now, right here, a $28 fare for 30 minutes of driving. Why would anybody accept that if they knew that 2 minutes away, they would be in a $30 surge zone? See, now right here, because I didn't accept requests, they logged me off, right? Oh no, what happens now? I sign back on. That's all that happens. That's the only risk you're taking by not accepting requests. The simple fact that you have to log back in. That's it. Now again, a $28 fare for 30 minutes of driving. If I just wait 2 more minutes, 2 more blocks of driving, I'll be in a $30 surge zone. So I'll make more from the surge just from that entire fare alone, driving 30 minutes. And again, drops me down to $8. Now, think about what that means. That means 2 blocks away, I'm earning $22 less. $36 for a 24-minute ride. On a normal day, that's not a bad thing, but I know that 1 block away now, I can have $30 just in the surge alone. Again, I'm still in an $8 surge area because this is where all the bars are, which is where all the Uber drivers are hanging out, and they're on the app, so they don't know that 2 blocks away, they're on a trip, so they don't know that 2 blocks away, it's a $30 surge zone. Once again, you saw an offer for $28, 30 minutes of driving, less than the surge in itself. Here it goes again. It kicked me off the app, offered me a trip, say, are you still there? It's doing everything it can to incentivize me to take a trip before I get to the $30 surge zone because they don't want to pay me the $30. Boom. Now look, if you notice, this does have the $30 surge included, but it's a 40-minute trip. Why would I drive 40 minutes away from the busiest area on the map? And holy smokes, look at what we got here. So because I waited and waited and waited and got kicked off the app a few times, and I did take on a little risk because it wasn't guaranteed that I would ever get a ride like this, I ended up getting a 7-minute ride for $34. That is a stupid rate. You know how stupid that is? It's so stupid that Uber lost money giving me that ride. The way this works is when I have a $30 surge, what Uber is going to do is give all the other rides that come up to other drivers that don't have that surge attached to them. It makes sense, right? If I'm in the $30 surge area and there's another car in the $15 surge area, why would Uber pay me when it could pay somebody else half as much? And that's what Uber's going to do, give rides to the other drivers that they can pay less. But because I was patient and all those other drivers scooped up the rides that I was rejecting, eventually I was the closest driver available to take that 7-minute ride. And because I had the $30 guarantee, Uber ended up having to pay me more than what the rider paid. And of course, Uber does this because to them, providing a reliable and fast service to riders is worth it to them, even if it means that 1 out of 100 rides, they have to lose money on it, because they know 99% of drivers out there aren't going to do this and instead keep giving rides for low prices. So they'll sacrifice losing money on a few rides here and there for the sake of remaining a very reliable and quick option for the rider. Now, you might be wondering, what the hell is the problem here? You just earned $35 for a 7-minute ride that works to be over $300 an hour. A ride where Uber lost money. And you got an issue with that? Of course not. That's not the point I'm trying to make by sharing these numbers. I'm trying to paint a picture of how Uber manipulates and changes the price literally by the second. In this instance, it's taking advantage of riders who are drunk and want to go home on a busy night. And it works for drivers on a night like this because, and only because, it's the rare instance where the supply of drivers is lower than the demand for drivers. But that only happens on a very few select nights of the year. For 99% of the year, the supply of drivers far exceeds the demand for rides. Think about the implications of that. Instead of forcing the rider to overpay the typical price, Uber can charge the rider a regular price, but drastically underpay the driver. Or what's even crazier, and I've seen this firsthand, they'll charge riders surge pricing, but not give the drivers a surge. That way, both the rider and the driver can get hosed and Uber can really clean up. And to prove I'm not just some disgruntled Uber driver talking about some conspiracy theory I cooked up in my own head, check out how Uber takes advantage of this particular scenario. At this point in the night, they've dropped the surge, so I'm only going to get an extra $4.25 from my next trip. But Uber is going to charge this rider $43 for a 10-minute ride, and then turn around give me, the driver, less than 50% of that. And that's how Uber looks 99% of the time when the supply of drivers outweighs the demand. And in case you were wondering what was going on with the Uber app after I just accepted that request when it said confirming if you're the best match, that's literally the Uber app seeing if there's other drivers in the area that will do the ride for cheaper. It's like they already have one. They already have me knowing that I would do it at that price. So let them try to bid on other drivers in the area for a lower price and see if anyone else will accept it. I mean, if you look at what just happened, it looks like they had found another driver. That driver might have canceled, and then they gave it back to me. Any driver will tell you that it's not uncommon to accept a request and then it disappears. And that's exactly what Uber is doing when it does that. Remember that ride I showed you at the start of the video where I said I would have earned less than minimum wage if I took it? Guess how much that would have cost the rider? $36 if, I didn't have that promo. More than 3 times what the driver gets paid. That's what Uber looks like the overwhelming majority of the time. I mean, look how many cars that are just sitting, waiting for a ride in this 2-mile radius. Think of it like this. There are 7 cars in the vicinity that Uber can offer this ride to. What Uber's going to do is to make an offer to one of the drivers in this area for as little as possible. And remember, they're using a high-powered algorithm with data points of drivers' past history. So they'll start with the lowest possible price that they think the driver will accept and then offer it to the driver with the highest chance of accepting it. If he says no, they'll just move on to the next driver, maybe bumping it up a few cents if they think it's necessary. When you order an Uber and it says pairing you with a driver, that's what the Uber algorithm is doing. It's like a reverse auction, seeing what driver will take the ride for the least amount of money. Ironically, I checked the same ride again just a few minutes later, and it was more expensive. And I know you might be thinking, charging 40 cents more sounds trivial. And I want to be clear, I'm not the type that cares if Uber's making money. I know a lot of people would say, oh, well, they're charging 40 cents more millions of times a day all around the world. But to me, I don't care if they make a profit. What's scary to me is the implications of this. What would happen if restaurants started changing the prices on their menu by the minute depending on how busy they were? Or the government started fluctuating toll prices depending on how much traffic happened to be on the road at that given time? Or what if companies started paying their workers more or less depending on how business was going at that time of the day? I know you might be rolling your eyes thinking, well, that'll never happen. And to that I have to say, there's an entire taxi cab industry that was sure the government would never let non-commercial cars start giving commercial fares, let alone do so by literally price gouging its customers and underpaying its drivers. But here we are. And I know you might be thinking, well, Uber is voluntary. Nobody's forcing these people to drive. Why are people accepting these trips if they're so bad? Now, that's a whole can of worms that a lot of people aren't going to like the answer to, so I'm going to save that for a different video. So click subscribe if you want to see me polarize my audience with some harsh truths. So because of my high rejection rate and my patience and willingness to take a little risk, because again, sometimes I do this and it doesn't work out and I miss out on rides. I got to be clear about that. My total earnings for New Year's Eve was this. And I know it says online time was 6 hours, but it was really 7. There's some time where I signed off the app to find a better spot, and I spent about $14 in gas. So after gas, my hourly worked out to be almost $53 an hour. Of course, that's before the expenses that come with car maintenance and the taxes I'll have to pay on that. I hope this video helps, and if you are interested in finding out who is accepting these garbage offers that Uber is offering, you can click this video here. Thanks for watching.